2 decades after the first World Cup, football returned to a very different world, a world scarred by war, rebuilding from the ashes. But in 1950, the game was ready for a comeback. What happened in Brazil that year was unlike anything before or since. No knockout final, no second chances, just one match that shocked an entire nation. This is the story of the 1950 World Cup, the tournament without a final. After the devastation of the Second World War, football became a beacon of hope. It brought people together and gave them something to cheer for. FIFA President Jules Rimet wanted to restart the World Cup as a celebration of peace. He hoped the world's best nations could put aside their differences and compete in the beautiful game. But before all that, a winner had to be decided. And this time, things wouldn't be easy. Many stadiums were damaged, players lost years of their careers, and some never returned. So by the late 1940s, football was still struggling to rebuild. But it was getting better. Teams started playing friendlies again and preparing for what would become known as the 1950 World Cup. Brazil had a new home for the tournament, the Maracanã. The venue boasted a capacity of around 200,000. And not only did it meet FIFA standards, it was a symbol of Brazil's own recovery. When FIFA awarded Brazil the hosting rights, there was little doubt that they'd dominate. The Selecao was a powerhouse of South American football. They'd won the Copa America 3 times in the 1940s, and with stars like Adamir, the inside forward Jair, the dynamic duo of Zizinho and Freia, Brazil was primed to bring the World Cup home. But in 1950, there was no guarantee of a final. Instead of a knockout final, the top 4 teams would play each other in a round-robin group. Points would decide the champion. If 2 or more teams are tied on points at the end of the group stage, then FIFA would use goal difference to determine the winner. Only 2 teams would need to be tied at the end of the group stage for a rematch to occur. For Brazil, it was an ideal scenario, and they showed their strength early. In the qualifying stage, they crushed Sweden 7-1, then they destroyed Spain 6-1. The semi-finals were equally emphatic. Brazil defeated the USA 8-0, and although they had a tougher match against Uruguay, winning 2-1, the Selecao looked unstoppable. The papers went wild. The favorites were cruising to the title, but the final was looming. On July 16, 1950, the world's attention turned to Rio de Janeiro. At the packed Maracanã, 200,000 spectators generated an electric atmosphere. It was a sea of white and blue, the colors of the Brazilian flag. Even then, Brazilian President Eurico Gaspar Dutra got involved. The president of the Brazilian Football Confederation was so confident of victory that he promised the nation a day off if the team won the World Cup. Offices and factories were given permission to close early. By 3 p.m., the streets were empty. Everyone was at the stadium. But among the sea of Brazilian supporters, there was a small contingent of sky blue, the color of the Uruguayan national team. To win the championship, Uruguay only needed a draw. They knew a victory would seal the deal, and while nobody gave them much of a chance, they had a few tricks up their sleeve. Stars like striker Juan Alberto Schiaffino and veteran goalkeeper Ochetarina had tasted World Cup glory before, having won the title in 1930. Manager Juan Lopez had a plan to counter Brazil's star-studded attack. Uruguay would play defensively, relying on counterattacks and soaking up pressure. The first half was tense. Brazil dominated possession, but the defense of Uruguay held firm. There were no goals, and as the second half began, the tension only grew. Then came the breakthrough. Inside right, Adamir collected a cross from the left. He cut back and unleashed a powerful shot into the top corner of the net. The crowd erupted. Brazil took the lead. However, the joy was short-lived. Midway through the second half, Schiaffino got behind the Brazilian defense and crossed low into the box. Veteran forward, Alcides Gigia arrived late, sliding in to send the ball past the diving Brazilian goalkeeper. The Uruguayan fans went wild. The rest of the game was evenly matched. Both sides pushed for a winner. But with 11 minutes remaining, Gigia struck again. A long pass sent him clear. He rounded the goalkeeper and slotted into an empty net. The referee blew his whistle. Uruguay 2, Brazil 1. A stunned silence fell over the Maracanã. Then pandemonium broke out among the Uruguayan supporters. Sky blue flags waved. Confetti rained down. But the image that will live on was that of the lone Brazilian supporter weeping uncontrollably in the stands. It was the stuff of fairy tales, a small underdog prevailing over the seemingly invincible. But perhaps even more remarkable than Uruguay's victory was Brazil's reaction. They took the loss gracefully, congratulating their opponents and vowing to do better next time. That's because the Maracanazo, as it became known, changed football forever. First, the shock result inspired Brazil to become a global superpower in the sport. Heartbroken by the loss, the Selecao vowed to never let it happen again. They redesigned their kit, changing from the blue and white to the now iconic yellow and green. The team went on to win the World Cup 5 times, lifting the trophy in 1958. 1962, 1970, 1994, and 2002. Second, the Maracanazo convinced FIFA to go back to a knockout final format. From 1954 onwards, the World Cup would be decided by a single match. And third, the upset proved to be a wake-up call for football administrators. They realized that a growing disparity in wealth between rich and poor nations threatened to derail the sport. FIFA set about creating a system to give developing nations a fairer shot at competing for the title. In 1954, FIFA created the FIFA World Cup trophy, a prize awarded to the best team outside the British Isles, Europe, Africa, Asia, and Oceania. 8 years later, the newly created CONCACAF region also received their own continental trophy, the CONCACAF Championship, but it was in 1989 when the tide really turned. FIFA organized the inaugural FIFA U20 World Cup to give young players a chance to shine on the international stage. The same year, FIFA created the FIFA Women's World Cup, which kicked off in 1991. So while the Maracanazo may have been a shock result in 1950, it paved the way for future generations to enjoy the beautiful game. The legacy of the day lives on in the stands of the Maracana. On one side, a banner reminds the world of the greatest upset in football history, while the other celebrates the Selecao's 5 world titles. It's a reminder that while Uruguay may have won in 1950, Brazil eventually came out on top. In 1950, there was no trophy ceremony on the pitch, no loud celebrations for the victors, just a stunned crowd and the quiet triumph of a small nation over a giant. In 2014, both teams met again at the same venue. This time, however, there was no fairy tale ending. Brazil won 4-1. For now though, Uruguay can hold their heads high, knowing that they'll always have the day they stun the world. The Maracanazo remains one of the greatest shocks in World Cup history, but the next tournament would introduce a team that changed football forever. Check out our video on how Brazil became the team of the century.